I'm somewhat more comfortable collecting real estate than I am collecting other stuff.
This is the Collecting Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Purse, here with your co-host, Bill Hamill. This morning, we interviewed Frank LaMark. Frank is a direct-to-seller expert, short-term rental guru. Bill, what'd you think?
Frank's a great guy. He is relentless. So it's inevitable that he's going to be ultra successful on whatever he does. He has been. He's reinvented himself 3 different times over the last 20 years. And he has a niche real estate specialty. And it's very interesting what he's doing.
Yeah, Frank is a true entrepreneur. He's the kind of guy that'll get punched in the face and then come back stronger. I think he has a lot of success in front of him.
Yes, absolutely. Literally.
Frank, thank you for being here this morning. Can we hear more about how you got into the real estate industry?
Sure. Thanks for having me, guys. So yeah, guys, I started 20 years old. I started selling cars, and I met a investor who came in, wanted to buy cash for a Chrysler 300M back in 2000. And I says, "Why are you got so many miles on your car?" And he says, "Well, I'm an investor and a property appraiser." He drove around all the time and needed new cars every year or two. So he kind of showed me the ropes, and this is back in the day when you could, bid on foreclosures. There was a website called goldenfeather.com in the Chicagoland area, and I bought my first duplex, believe it or not, and I just recarpeted it and repainted it and flipped it, made a couple bucks, and I was hooked.
That's fantastic. So going back in the car business, was it pretty seamless to go from selling cars, jump right into real estate, hit the ground running?
No, I was horrible at car sales actually the first year. I was an amateur boxer, so when I went in there, I had a black eye, and they're like, "Kid, you're not going to make it here." And I was horrible, absolutely horrible. So I had to really, really, really research more the psychology of it, and just wrapping my head around why people, want to buy a product from me and with no experience. So to go into real estate, I kind of just fell into it, but I was hooked. I was always an entrepreneur. Even at 12 years old, I had a paper route making money, buying my first little bicycle, right? So no, it wasn't seamless at all. I struggled with that too. So I made some pitfalls, and that's how you learn, right? In the real estate game.
So it sounds like once you got into real estate, you caught the bug and you loved it right away. But your experience as a car salesman definitely helped once you got there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I got out of car sales is I started doing more and more properties. I bought a condo in Florida, and then I got hooked on the short-term rental game in Florida. And that was probably 2000 and maybe 2005, something like that. And that was great. That's what got me hooked more on the short-term rental Airbnb properties as well.
No, that's great. I love that background. I didn't know you were an amateur boxer, so you have that fighter mentality. Getting into car sales has some similarities there, and I can see that entrepreneurial attitude that you have to lead you till now. So it started in 2000 with the cars, then gets into a rental, then some short-term stuff. Here we are 20 years later. What are you currently working on?
Wow. Well, since I got into a Marco, so a mastermind a couple of years ago, I really propelled myself. I always had the mindset that I have to bring all my money to the table. I had to find my own deals. I had to do everything myself, bank loans, you name it. And I was slowly, getting one property a year, 2 properties a year. And over the course of time, I learned more creative financing. And I just got basically tired of dealing with realtors and banks where they were finding me the deals. I had no control over it. And then the banks, things change every week, it seems like, with their, how they structure it. So that's when I got more into creative financing. Once I got into his mastermind, I learned the power of partnerships. I learned the power of how to raise capital. I learned the powership of how to find my own deals. So fast forward 20 years, it's completely different. So from last year, we did 26 properties. We acquired them right around 7 million bucks. And this year, I'm looking to do 20 million in acquisitions, mostly by texting, cold calling, sellers direct. And in this market now, everyone has, excuse me, overvaluing their property. So that kind of parlayed into the short-term rental, where it really doesn't matter what the property value is. It's more of your cash flow. So what builds better cash flow than, a short-term rental?
20 million acquisitions. That's really impressive for this upcoming year. I know that's a paid mastermind group, and some people are hesitant to join a paid group, but it clearly pays off for you. And joining a group where you have other experienced professionals can really benefit you in the long term. Can you tell us more about how you structure these deals? When you contact these sellers, what are you and asking them?
Yeah, good point is, you can't really put a price tag on education whatsoever, and it's, a barrier threshold. So you don't just want anyone to kind of get into a mastermind. There's got to be some paid into it, but of course, people are skeptical. They think it's some sort of pyramid scheme, and by no means. You need education, whether it's college or real life experiences. But why reinvent the wheel, right? Learn from other people's mistakes and kind of build off of that. And that kind of propelled me. I just really looked at these people and I'm like, how can I push this to the next level? Because I do have that fighter mentality where I just don't give up. So to kind of answer your question is, it's a good one. It's kind of hard to kind of put that to words.
Well, how about a hypothetical? If I'm the owner that you're calling me, what's the first thing you're gonna say?
So number one, they have to have some sort of urgency or want to sell. If I just go and call my neighbor and say, "Do you want to sell your property?" Well, why do I have to sell it, right? So that's my first question is, not just do you want to sell, but what's their need? Divorce, foreclosure, liens on the property, loss of job, relocation for job, you name it. That's got to be their number one thing. Secondly, I always go for seller financing. Why and how am I able to acquire so many properties per month if I have to go and get bank loans, go through the process, go into closing, and then the deal could fall through potentially with the lender? So I first go and ask people, I'll give you two offers: a cash offer, which commands a cash discount, or a seller financing, or on something on terms. And then I have my sales pitch on why they should sell to me in terms. They make money on the interest, less capital gains per year, so on and so forth. Once I have that, then I structure the deal. I show them how much money they can basically make on this, and it's a win-win. From there, I've had enough experience to basically draft our own documents, have the attorney reapprove them, and then boom, we're off to the races, and we could close as soon as title is done. That's how I'm able to do 2, 3, and then this goal, 5 to 6 properties per month. And that's not just single family homes. I did pick up a couple of multifamily, small mixed use property that we're going to convert to a short-term rental complex. So that's really the secret sauce. It's not really the programs we use, like we use launch control for texting and cold calling and all that, and scripts and all that. It really comes down to closing, right? A lot of investors aren't closers. So that kind of parlays into, I've got the mentality that I just will not give up. I will find a way creatively to make this deal work for both of us where it's a win-win. I'm very ethical in the way I do things. So I want to make sure that they're happy through the whole transition. And it gives them less opportunity to back out as well when you have that mentality. And 3, I know how to structure these where they're profitable. So what I kind of need help with in the future is more cloning of myself and somebody that could take off the weight of raising capital where I could fully have my attention to the acquisition aspect of it.
No, I love that with the mastermind coaching, mentorships. I did not see the real value for so many years. I learned on my own after educating myself with some books and had a degree of success and naively said, I have it all figured out. Now I'm going to manage these properties, rock and roll. 10 or 12 years later, very frustrated, and then deciding to scale into multifamily, which was ultimately a limiting belief early on when I was just buying smaller rental properties, join that mentorship community, mainly just for the education to scale, but then seeing the value of the relationships that you make and the potential partnerships and that proximity. So looking back at what you were saying there, when you're doing your direct to seller, you're finding a win-win deal, but ultimately solving someone's problem. Ultimately, to solve your problem of, getting into a deal that's going to work for you based on what your goals are. When you're doing these direct to seller calls and texts and all these campaigns, what type of time do you put into it, and what type of conversion percentages do you get, where you actually get to a closing table?
Yeah, great question. That's what I do. I buy excuse me, in the underwriting, and that's it. I think, how can we structure this to make it a win-win, and how we could both push it past the finish line. So yeah, I'm a full-time investor, so I work and do all my calls and texting in the morning from 9 to noon, 1 o'clock, and then I set up my appointments with the sellers in the afternoon, and I just go and start talking and build a little bit of rapport. But rapport isn't everything, and that's kind of a misconception in sales. It is something, just like the purchase price of the property, but it's not everything. It's always about the money and how we could solve their problems. So kind of a conversion rate that's everything. When you come and you dial this in, is your cost per acquisition. For a single family home, it's roughly between $2,500 and $3,500 I'm going to spend on campaigning, virtual assistants, you name it, all the background stuff. With a multifamily, probably looking at double. And I like to be a big fish in a small pond, so I'm concentrating on my area around the northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin. So everything from Lake Geneva, Wisconsin to Gurnee to Lake Zurich, probably, like I said, a 30-mile radius where I could drive within an hour and meet people. Once I have this really, really dialed in, then I'll branch to other places. But I think that's the hardest part with some investors. They'll just go everywhere. They'll canvas all over the place, and really, they should really focus on one thing. As my dad said, be the best number 2 pencil salesman, right? Very specific, very, very focused.
Frank, my first job was a lot of cold calling, 80 plus cold calls a day in logistics sales. So I love talking about this stuff. It seems like you're definitely an expert in the direct to seller area.
Yep.
I like how you said it's not all about rapport, even though that's a big part of it. And I think that's because if someone's not looking to sell, they're not going to sell to you no matter how much they like you. When you start talking to someone, you call them, you get them on the horn, how long does it take for you to get into the numbers? How long do you spend trying to build that relationship before you get to business?
It's always about the numbers. So I dive right into it. I first get them off texting immediately, and I want to ask them, why do you want to sell?
So you text first?
Okay. Yeah, text first and get them off immediately. I just basically will ask them, do you want to sell? If they say yes, that's when can I call you right now this second? Now I have virtual assistants in the background that do all that kind of warming up, and then immediately they'll say hot lead and I'll jump on. And that's the importance of being really into it and not just being like, okay, I'll call later today or tomorrow, because time kills deals, right? Mm-hmm. As soon as I get them on the phone, I'm going to, okay, why do you want to sell? What's your pain or urgency? And how could I solve your problem? Okay, I need cash now immediately. I'm being incarcerated next week. Okay, let's make it happen. So a terms deal probably isn't going to work, right? Or a payment plan isn't going to work. So that's where some of the deals were, and it's, believe it or not, that happens. Or I've got a federal tax lien of $200,000, and I need to get rid of this property because they're going to foreclose on me. It happens, right? I mean, everyday people have problems, whether they're rich or poor. And believe it or not, more rich people have a lot more financial problems than poor people.
So say you get someone who's looking to sell their property, but they're not in desperate needs. What kind of terms are you trying to set up with them?
Yeah, perfect example is paid off properties or tired landlords. Tired landlords, the property will be paid off sometimes. and they just want to get out, but they like to have that nest egg of the money coming in. We picked up an 8-unit commercial mixed units property. Property's paid off. He didn't need the money, but he was tired of dealing with the tenants. That's where I come in and I structure it. Well, listen, yes, you're not going to make as much money with the monthly payment that you were, but you're not getting all these headaches. Let me deal with it. Let me deal with the problems. So I turned around this tired landlord with a paid off property. Yes, we overpaid for the property, but it's still cash flow, 20% cash on cash return. So I'll basically show in an amortization chart, here's how much money you're making the interest. And I structure it always with, the lowest payment, no interest, no balloon, 25 to 30-year AM, and start from there. And believe it or not, sometimes it hits, right? You never know until somebody says yes.
What was the number for that 8-unit? Like 30-year, 5%?
It was a 3%, 25-year AM with no balloon. So yeah, I think our payment to them is $4,500, and we're profiting I think $2,200.
Wow.
No, that's great. You're showing them the benefits clearly with numbers. This is what you're going to make in interest.
Yep, you have to. I mean, so immediately get into the numbers, show how it's beneficial to them, solve their problem. I'm going to take on these headaches, the drama that comes along with property management, as Bill knows.
So what does the team look like if you have one? So you're direct to seller, you're on the phone, you're making deals, you're converting, you're closing. Are you also operating after you just purchased $20 million of real estate in 2021? Well, what does that look like from direct to seller through operations right now?
So this year for 2022, I have a goal of 20 million, and there's no way I'm going to be able to do that myself. I push the limits. I can only close 2 to 3 properties a month because there is so much in me doing everything. So the problem I had was as a bottleneck, right? So all these properties are coming up and then they're closing, and then we have to remodel them, property management, get it, and then I had to divert my attention away from that. So building the team is actually the most important part. I do have some partners in the background, and I believe in giving partnerships, not hiring people to do property management. So I'll give away some equity for somebody to help me with property management. I'll give away some equity to somebody that has to do a project management. So the only way I'm going to do it, and I'm in basically a transition period now. If I'm going to hit my goal, I need to clone myself. I need to teach somebody how to close people, how to be relentless in getting it past the finish line, showing value to the seller, and lastly, once we get this bottleneck, how to take it over, how to handle it, pushing it off, and let your partners fail a little bit, right? They have to learn, they have to grow, even if they're not as good as you or better than you or more or less experienced than you. So you have to pass that wand and let them succeed and grow, because you can't really clone yourself. If they were, they'd be doing this on their own, right? They're with you because they learn the experience.
You need someone who's just comfortable on the phone, and not everyone is. I'm impressed that you knew the cost per acquisition. That's a really important metric for someone doing what you do. Do you have, some people call it a lapse funnel, the leads, where they get into the funnel from a lead to the closing. Do you have a process like that where you follow along the entire process?
Yeah, keep it simple, right? Get them off there, push them to the CRM. We use Podio for a CRM, and then just keep track of them. The cool thing about Podio, it's really simple. You could code it, change it, and I just have tickers. Hey, contact them here, contact them there. Our texting campaigns, they have drip campaigns as well, so they'll do follow-up. So all that automation happens in the background, and the next thing you know, like I'm working on a commercial recreational use, 2 acres on a lake. I've been working this guy since August of 2019. He's now ready. He's finally realizing that, hey, I'm not going to get what I want for it. The problem, it has a lot of variances and easement issues that we got to get legal to fix. So, yeah, I mean, you have to have systems, but don't overcomplicate the process. It's not really that complicated. And I think a lot of people are in our group of investors are overeducated, and they get analysis paralysis, right? Keep it simple, get it streamlined, and then build from there. Your cost per acquisition by far is the most important metric, because you're spending all this money. You got to know how much you're getting out of it, right?
That's great. Overeducated, and I agree. I agree. Everyone's so different. Where I read that first book when I was 21 years old. I didn't even get through the book, and I was out looking for that first property. Is that the way to do it? No. But point being, it's all about taking action. So yes, you have to find that healthy balance, educate yourself so you're making very informed, good decisions because we're buying big money assets here. But going back to your short-term rentals, I'm also seeing another layer there where you have to get variances and permission from municipalities for a lot of what you're doing. And also, you had mentioned a few times here, cloning what you do. So what does cloning Frank LaMark look like?
You have to have that entrepreneurial spirit. If you don't have that sickness in your stomach that's going to push that bar to the next level, you can't work with me. You got to be creative. You got to be relentless. You got to be smart. You have to keep pushing for the next level. You cannot be average, right? Average is boring. Keep pushing to be a better person, ethically, morally.
So even though you don't think it'll be possible to find another Frank LaMark, when you're looking for this person, are you just trying to look for someone that's hungry and willing to learn what you're willing to teach them?
Yeah, like I said, you guys are building me up too much. I'm not that special. I just have that tenacity and that drive that's gonna want to push everything, to the next level. So, in all reality, if somebody had your same mindset, they're gonna be doing this on their own. But I humbly came to the realization you're gonna need to bring other people in. You cannot do this all yourself. You have to let other people fail and or succeed. So yeah, I mean, I have brought in other people and they have succeeded beyond my expectations. So it is possible. Back to my car sales days, I was a car sales manager, and it's the 80% rule, right? 20% of the people are gonna make 80% of the money. So you have to have those other people on your staff, basically.
Is there anyone in the real estate industry that you've learned from in the direct to seller space?
Yeah, Pace Moby. I studied him relentlessly. I watched his YouTube videos when I was working out. I was in the Astro Flippings mastermind for a little bit. I'm not really a wholesaler because I can have access to capital, so I don't have to get rid of deals. That's a great stepping stone, wholesaling, to learn the process. And I highly recommend more education when it comes to masterminds like that. But once you get to that point where you can raise capital, you have your own money, or can structure deals creatively. And that's kind of what Pace talks about, is why get rid of these dead deals that nobody wants? You can convert them, and there is ways to do it. Thirdly, one of my mentors was actually a real estate attorney who strictly does only real estate transactions creatively all around the country. He taught me how to correctly and legally structure these where you can get this done. So in the Midwest, articles for agreement of deed, I believe it's called, or subject to mortgage, creative financing deals like that, are people understand them, because back in the 80s when interest rates were in double digits, people couldn't just go get a mortgage, and they understand that. When some parts of the country they don't. So that's helped out a lot.
Creative financing is key. I think if you're going to be a professional in the real estate business, at some point, you have to utilize the creative financing to continue to grow your business. It's just another tool in the toolbox. I love how you mentioned that 80-20 in car sales. I've been a realtor for a long time, and it's the same thing. 80% of the realtors do all, or 20% of the realtors do all of the business.
Yep.
80% of the realtors are tending bar. So
Yep.
that probably is the same thing through industries, especially sales industries across the board. It's those people that are relentless, disciplined, committed, consistent. And I also appreciate that, hey, you're not going to find that person that checks all those boxes, because they would be, doing their own thing at this point. And so there's the challenge. Seeing what you've been doing currently on those short-term rentals, those big lake houses, you're doing creative financing, raising money. What do they look like? Are you doing a lot of remodel, a lot of rehabs? How are you cash flowing, those properties?
So one of the first ones that we picked up was a gentleman who was diagnosed with cancer. He has, I think he said something like 4 million square feet of commercial real estate space. So he's a very accomplished real estate investor himself. This lake house, he basically used it as a storage lot, and which was funny because it's $1 million storage lot, and he has a private island where he likes to hang out at. So he has a want to sell because he didn't want his kids to deal with all this property that he has. So he's slowly selling stuff off. From there, that was his need. So I went to him with a creative financing deal. We structured it for 5 years at a 3% with a 5-year balloon. And we did have to put some money into it because he basically let it go to waste for the past like 6-7 years. It was vacant, a lot of work. We had to put a couple $100,000 into the property itself just to get it at an acceptable condition. We probably still need to put more. We could dump more into it, but as the cash flow does come in, we could start doing that. And I think we're at right around a 17% return, cash on cash return with that property. And every year it's going to keep going up. Come year 4, we're going to refi it, pay back the investors the majority of their capital, and then it becomes infinite returns after that. So that was a hard one because there was a heavy lift involved. There was a lot of moving parts, and we flipped it all in about 3 weeks. So we had tons of trades in there. That took away from me finding more properties. That kind of parlayed 8 months later into the neighbor constantly complaining that our people are loud. There's a lot of cars in the driveway. I basically asked him, hey, what's it going to take for me to purchase your property to make you happy? We have that deal in contract now, his neighbor, for $830,000. That it's a little bit structured differently. Doesn't need a thing. It's a turnkey. We literally, all the furniture is even included in the deal. That we're raising capital to pay it cash. And then come year 2 or year 3, we're going to refi that and pay back the investors. So different structures for different situations. There was another one in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, where it's 2 blocks from the downtown. Very awesome tourist location, short-term rental. That one we picked up for $140,000 on a subject to mortgage deal. So he literally, when COVID hit, he owned a restaurant. And he ran out of money and basically had no business and no money to remodel this existing house. I said, let's do a subject to. I'll take over your payments. We dumped $40,000 into the remodel. 2 months later, we have it rented, and it's by far one of our best income generating, and it's not that expensive. The ARV on it is right around 300 now, and like I said, we have about 180 into it. So we could immediately flip it and make money, but the returns, the cash on cash is stupid.
You understand the different tools that you have with creative financing, and you know how to deploy them for different situations. I love that example of buying the neighbor's house. That's so good because they're complaining. You say, yeah, I'll buy your house instead.
That's the power of, his need. That's his urgency to sell, is he didn't want to live next to a short-term rental. And these by far are not party places by any means. They're expensive. These big, this place is 4,000 square feet on 2.5 acres on a lake. There's family events that go on here. These people are paying $1,000 to $2,000, $2,500 a night to come in there. The guests are rolling up 10 Teslas deep, parking their cars there. They're not there to like spring break it up. They're there to family events, mom's 70th birthday party. Mm-hmm. We've had wakes there, believe it or not, private wake ceremonies, because a lot of funeral places can't have a lot of people there. Weddings we've had there. So he just didn't want to live next door to that, whether it's a party place or not. But that was his urgency to sell. And I picked that out immediately and went for it and just said, what do we take? And now I'm in the stage of my game a couple years later of doing this, that I had the pit in my stomach, like, okay, I get that feeling, that urge that I need to raise the bar. We're going to come in with all cash and buy this. So more and more properties we've been doing like that strategy. There's another one called the Roxana Motel. It's an old bed and breakfast in Fox Lake, Illinois. It was built 1893. Same scenario. It was basically in the decline. There's not many motels on these chain of lakes. I wanted to revitalize it. I wanted to bring it to the 22nd century, into, and not a bed and breakfast anymore, into a short-term rental complex. I presented that to the village, and they're very short-term rental friendly, so they like the idea of pushing it forward like that. And now there's really only 3 motels on these chain of lakes, and we own 2 of them now. So I'm looking more for commercial type properties where we can convert that. And getting away from your question here, but yeah, like I said, I could talk all day long about creative financing and the power of it.
I love it. I think we could too.
No, that's awesome. The one thing that I think of when you're talking about your clientele, I remember back when I was just beginning learning that tenant selection was the name of the game. You get the wrong people in your property, you're set up for failure. You screen and you get the right people in your apartments, and you're set up for success. What does the screening process looks like? I'm sure that there's a lot of partiers that do want to take advantage of your great resort houses. Do you have to turn a lot of people away, or what's that line where you say, okay, you're qualified, you're not?
Yeah, good point. And Airbnb has their algorithm down when it comes to that. They have to be verified. They have to have reviews. They can't just be a first-time person coming in on Halloween. Let's say Halloween night is a big party night, or Christmas or New Year's. So they have the venting process down pretty good. But there's some that slip through the cracks. And if we don't have one night bookings, they have to be a minimum of 2. They have to spend the money. We don't want somebody to spend $1,000 for a night there. So yeah, we'll ask them, what is your event? What are you doing? We won't do it for one night because potentially, there can be some issues with partying and whatnot. So that's important, for our asset. We want to make sure this thing's protected. We don't want it to be, messed with. And in turn, that's not the model that I'm looking for. I don't want that Daytona Beach party house. We want a family-friendly event. And I think that the municipalities around here and the counties appreciate that too. We want to keep it family-friendly. First and foremost, the neighbors will make sure they're happy, right? We don't want to continuously have to buy the neighbor out, because that just gets a little old. And I don't have unlimited funds and resources, so that's just not doable. But that's my kind of goal, is to revitalize these areas to kind of get off the topic. But back here in the early 1900s, this was a huge tourist attraction for people from Chicago. It's only an hour drive. What changed it in the decline of the bed and breakfast is new roads, better transportation with railroads and cars, where people are able to drive now to Florida, or drive to the East Coast, or drive to other places. And then airplanes became more affordable and more acceptable for travel. So the decline went down in this area, and it suffered. So now there's not many areas to rent, believe it or not, on these lakes. That's what I kind of want to redo, is revitalize the area, bring more of this tourism, cash that these towns need as well.
Frank, I heard you mention raising capital, paying back your investors on a refi. What does that look like for your structure? Are you taking on debt partners, equity partners?
A little bit of both. Every situation is a little different. I like to sweeten the pot and give people the equity. So when we do refi and give them their money back, they're able to keep that equity. Some people say I'm not that smart doing it, but I am still pretty new to this game. I need to build the portfolio up bigger. So I have no problem. And I'm trying to bring in the only top key players like Bill. You have to sweeten that pot, not only for money aspect, but for their experience, right? I believe in being the stupidest person in the room and bringing smarter people in to guide me through the process, to get it passed. So I don't think it's wrong to give up a little bit in the beginning to see the bigger picture in the end.
No, that's the way to do it. Yeah, you if you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room, right? Getting back to your focus right now are these lake houses. Is that going to be your lane going forward, where you're going to continue with these short-term rentals and these lake house concepts? And seeing that you mentioned you want to see it 10 Teslas deep, all I can picture is, do you have airplanes coming in with the pontoons where you have an airplane flying in and people have to rowboat in, that type of clientele?
You know what? I didn't really plan on this. I planned on building, a single family, multifamily portfolio, with creative financing coupled with now we're on a lake. It became the perfect storm, right? So these situations that just come across your desk, what the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of investors are going to go for the lowest hanging fruit. I'm going to work harder and figure out how we can make this situation work. So we have this expensive $1 million lake house that needs a ton of work to it. The average investor would be like, what am I going to do with this property? He overvalued the property. He wasn't budging on the price. That's why it sat for 6 years on the market, on and off. He had health conditions, so he had to sell it, but he wasn't just going to let it go for nothing. How can I make this deal work? That's how I kind of got into this. So creatively, okay, let's learn all the Airbnb rules and the laws and all that fun stuff. So now we just push it to the next level. Now we're getting more experience with these counties, and now they're becoming more well known. I've actually been asked by a couple of the village officials, like, are you laundering money? Where are you getting all this money from? It's like the Ozarks, right? the TV show. No, I mean, I told them we got partnerships and we're working to revitalize these communities, and they love the idea. So yeah, to kind of answer your question is, no, I didn't really plan on it. But the next level is buy more of these properties that are, even if they're overpriced, it doesn't matter with financing. It's the cash flow, right? I think in the next 2 to 3 years, the short-term rental game is even explode even more. And how I'm kind of seeing that, I don't have a crystal ball, but I deal with a lot of buyers and sellers. And the buyers right now are these hedge funds that are coming in buying huge portfolios of single family homes. And I'll get emails, texts, I want to buy more of your property, I want to buy the entire neighborhood. They're starting to get into that short-term rental space. And with the big players, institutional money's coming in like that, wanting huge portfolios, that's where I see the next level. And I don't think I'll ever retire. I'll just constantly raise that bar. And so, we basically, like I said, want to be a big fish in a small pond, and how we could take this whole area over, revitalize the area, and bring in revenue for the towns.
I agree with everything you just said. The institutions are trying to get into short-term rentals, and if you're not in it already in 2 to 3 years, it'll be very hard to get into that space.
It'll be impossible. They're going to grandfather it out, and if you don't have those licensings and done properly.
Exactly.
So I got a weird message the other day on Facebook from some investor that says, well, how can I get around these? How are you going to get caught? I'm like, I don't do anything that's not according to the book, because this is a business. Mm-hmm. If for you to just ask me that, I'm not even going to respond to you, because that's not professional. That's not ethical. I mean, the whole idea is to revitalize these areas and make it a win-win. If it's not a win-win, people are going to be slighted, and they're going to come out and they're going to try and get you in trouble. So why would you want to be detrimental to that? And then look, 10 years down the road, these properties are going to be worth 4 times the amount, not just for the real estate value, but now you have a cash flowing business like a multifamily. And that's where your cap rate comes in, right? So if these properties are making 30% cash returns, and you have let's say $100 million portfolio, yeah, that's a huge business right there that take very seriously.
No, I love that. You're transforming from, buying these individual lake houses that are done based on comparables. You're building a portfolio so you could blanket them together in this business, create a net operating income, and basically transform this lake house into 10 or 20 lake houses into this business, that's operating at a dramatically higher value.
Yeah. So to get back to thinking creatively, there was this 8-unit mixed property with a bar. It sat on the market on and off for 8 years. The owner had it paid off. He didn't need it. He was making $6,000 a month in positive cash flow, but he didn't want to budge on the price. But no one would buy it because not just the price, but there's really no upside to it. I looked at it as creatively and outside the box. And I had to convince some of my partners to come on board with it as well, that this is zoned recreational commercial. It's a motel that we could convert the whole 8-unit into one big family complex and generate infinite returns on it. So thinking outside and being creative is the hardest part of doing this. Everyone's super, conservative with underwriting and how they structure a deal. And they're very, mind focused on it. Think outside and the opportunity. But yeah, at the same time, you got to, have contingencies. What if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? So that's what I need partners on as well. I'll think almost too creative sometimes, and I need somebody to kind of pump my brakes and be like, well, let's look at it like this, or what if? So sometimes we have strategy sessions that last an entire day of what ifs. But I get off the topic a lot, so tell me the guys to shut up. But
now, what I love about what you're saying throughout this entire show is, you're taking problem solving to another level. You are solving some serious problems and really trying to come up with solutions to make these properties work. Ultimately, your end goal is, if we're going to cash flow after we reposition this property, that's the goal, right? It doesn't matter how you get there. Frank, this is the collecting real estate show. So they say you have to have 3 of something to have a collection. So we've got 3 questions for you to finish up here. What is your 1-year business goal?
So this 1 year is to triple acquisitions. And the only way I'm going to do that is with a strong team behind me.
Your 1-year personal goal?
I had torn my bicep a couple of years ago and finally feeling better, and I started working out again. So to get my mental and physical health at the peak performance I had 2 years ago, by far is my personal goal right now.
Awesome. How do Stephen and I and the listeners assist you, and how do we contact you?
You could shoot me an email. I don't know if you wanted to put it in the recording, or I could just say it. It's frank@lamcoinvestments.com. We schedule a call. How you guys could help me is I need your experience, right? Onto getting onto my team. I'm recruiting you. I want to bring you on board, Bill. I'm going to hound you and stalk you. I don't know much about you, Stephen, but if you got tenacity like Bill, then I want you too.
We can talk.
You're relentless. I love that. Frank, fantastic. Now, we appreciate you being on. I'm going to be watching you very closely. I know that there's big things ahead for you. But once again, thanks for being on our show. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, guys, for having me.
Thanks, Frank.
Take it easy.